Hi everyone, my name is Sabina. I am an SI leader at the ARC, and today we're going to be going over the factors that shift demand. All right, so we have factors that shift our demand curve. All right, so our first one is income. This is one of the biggest factors. So if our income goes up, our demand for a certain good would also go up. So we can show this on a graph. Price, quantity, and our demand curve, I'm going to label it as demand 1. And so to show an increase in demand, we're going to shift from demand 1 to demand 2. Okay, so that's our first factor that shifts the demand curve. Our second one, price of a related good. So, for example, we have substitutes and complements, right? So for our first example with substitutes, we can use, for example, we can use Coke and Pepsi. So I'll use price of good A, which in our case would be Pepsi. And then that affects our demand for good B, which will be Coke in this case. So if the price, I'll write it like this. So if the price of good A, price of Pepsi increases, that would also increase our demand for Coke because they are substitute goods. So you see them as one-to-one. So if Pepsi gets more expensive, you're going to want to demand Coke, right? And so you can draw this on our market. So this will be our market of Coke. We draw our demand curve. And then to show an increase, again, it would be increasing demand this way. So demand would go from demand 1 to demand 2 for our substitute goods. So our second part for price of related good would be our complements. In this example, we're talking about printers and ink, because we see them, they work together. When you need a printer, you need ink as well. So in my example here, good A is printers and good B is ink. So if the price of good A increases, what would happen to our demand for good B? It would decrease, right? Because if you're looking at it in the sense of printers and ink, if the price of a printer increases, your demand for ink would go down because you're not using as much. If you don't have a printer, then you don't need ink. So a third factor that shifts demand is consumer taste or preferences. So for example, if we compare Nikes to Adidas, people have preferences, right? So if you prefer Nikes over Adidas, what would happen to your demand for Nikes, since we're in the market of Nikes, right? You would go from demand 1 to demand 2 if you prefer Nikes over Adidas. And same goes the other way around. If we were in the market for Adidas and you prefer Adidas over Nikes, your demand would increase. So these are just preferences based on, the things that we like, the things that we see on TV, and based off of that. So our fourth factor that shifts demand are expectations of future prices. So in this example, if future prices are expected to increase, what will happen to the demand today? Well, if you think about it, so if we know that the price of something is going to increase in the future, you'd want to buy that today, right? Because it's cheaper today than it will be in the future. So if you think about it, right, demand, we go from demand 1 to demand 2 for whatever good we're talking about today, right? Our demand would increase today because it's going to be more expensive in the future. So on the other hand, if future prices are expected to decrease, your demand today will also decrease because you know that in the future it'll be cheaper to buy whatever you're in the market for than it is today.